Great, thank you, Lynn. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Information Technology Advisory Board meeting. Please be sure to sign in so that the minutes will reflect that you're present at the meeting. And speaking of minutes, the minutes of our January 17th, 2019 meeting have been distributed. And if you haven't had an opportunity to review this, I would ask that you quickly do so, and then we would entertain a motion for approval as submitted.
Make a motion to approve the January 17, 2019 meeting minutes as presented.
We have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. With no further discussion, all those in favor of accepting them as presented signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. And they stand accepted. Kent, it's your show now.
Okay, digital signage update, that's AdGators. The boards have been up in the courthouse for several months now. We've had a couple of hardware issues. We think they're network card issues, but AdGators has shipped out hardware to replace it. We've got another one coming in today. So they've been on top of things. The boards in front of the tippy room here where the agendas are usually posted, development is still underway on posting the agendas and getting them to scroll. We're also looking for other ideas to post. If we're only going to be posting 3 to 4 days worth of agendas, there will be some dead times on the second board. So Linda Horton's got a couple of ideas, including posting the recurring meetings, things like that, having them scroll through, but if anyone has any other suggestions, we're willing to listen.
Would the recurring meetings have their unique agendas, or is it just going to announce dates and times of meetings without the detail of the agenda?
Either way at this point.
Okay. I think we would like our unique agenda every month with those agenda items to be able to be posted.
Okay.
Because people want to know which specific rezonings and which specific subdivisions are coming up.
Okay.
I think we'd want to move that way for the Drainage Board too, Kent. Have the individual agenda for that month so people can see what projects were on there.
And Kent, right now, your staff has to do all of that work or those postings and everything. You handle
No.
You don't, okay. So Linda is doing hours, and Zach's staff would be able to do their work then?
I believe so. Brenda should be able to do it, yeah.
Right.
Will we get some training on that?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. The way the Agenda Center on our website works is making it a little more difficult for them to pull these agendas and get them posted. So it might add another step to your staff on posting agendas. They might have to do it to our website and then also to a Google Docs site.
Okay.
But it shouldn't be much more involved in placing the file out there. Should be a minor step, not a major one.
I don't know if this is, usually the digital signage around the university usually also advertises like events that are happening or other things. So if there's any processes we can do in place to have things from like Extension or CASA, they're not in the building, but I think it would be good to have that same, if there's content that's already created for social media, then maybe that can also be another thing that shows up on the boards.
Okay.
And I see in the minutes here, I kind of brought this up last month, I'll bring it up again. Do we know does this constitute a posting of a public meeting?
Yes.
We have something, I tried to send an email, or I did send an email to the Public Record Council, and I never got any response. But it just be my concern, I mean, I don't want us to get in trouble for not properly posting a...
Luke Brett had stated that posting on the website itself constitutes posting in today's technological age. Public Access Council.
Okay.
So having it posted electronically here would also count.
And you have that in writing or something if that ever comes up?
I will get it.
Okay,
I
know, it'd
think
just
I've
be
got it
nice to
somewhere,
have it.
but
Okay, just a concern, I don't
Yeah.
want to get in trouble for any of us for not properly posting a public meeting.
You're absolutely right. You always want to get it in writing because things change.
Yeah,
And that position changes too, it seems like quite regularly.
Bob's right, though, that's a very serious matter. Most is 48 hours, so,
yeah, and certainly, if that's if that is our posting, something that's scrolling and only gets back to the same posting every 10 minutes would be a hard way to get public information. Like if you're waiting for all the other content to go through and get back to it, I think that would be a pretty hard way to call that a posting, like, oh, well, if you would have waited another 5 minutes, it would have come around again.
That's nice. I'm having two boards, with one of them just posting the next 2 to 3 days worth of agendas.
Yeah,
There's not that many meetings that you'll have to wait that long.
yeah.
Kind of like on election night.
Wait for it to come back up on the thing, yeah. Yeah, that would probably be pretty frustrating for someone trying to use it, yeah.
Ken, before we leave that subject, I would like to, I guess, request that this board see the in writing verification at our next meeting, just because here's another twist to what we were just talking about. Alana brought up a good point and triggered my thought process. We also post it on our website, and we also send it out via email to all, newspapers and TV and everybody. So we do it multiple ways, is what I'm trying to say, and so I'd be curious to know what they have to say as far as which is legitimate, or are they all legitimate, or are there different ratings of such, or whatever the case may be. So.
And I'd go one step further. If it's something that you can lock down pretty quick,
Yeah.
get it to us before the next meeting.
Sure.
We just know that we're safe, and if we run into any problems, we can give it back to Doug to look at.
Very good.
I'm pretty confident that they've made a provision, but I like having, it's like dealing with State Board of Accounts.
Yes.
Right.
If you've got a ruling or
Yes.
a thought, be sure you get it in writing. Right, Bob?
Yeah, yes.
I mean, certainly, like, we can post it in more than one ways, but if we know that this is not, that we're doing this for educational transparency reasons, then that's different than if this is the required posting, and this is the one, the true, the only one. Yeah, to know kind of what's extra and what we need to, so, if our website's down, we better have the scrolling thing going or whatever, yeah.
Exactly.
Sometimes it takes the state a long time to catch up with, especially the statute, to catch up with current methods of doing business. So we want to make sure that the legal posting isn't paper on a bulletin board still.
Yeah.
Okay, also on the AdGators digital signage, where we have a quote on putting up kiosks that will have directions to the various departments in the office building, along with directions to the courthouse, 629, those other public-facing buildings. We're looking to see if there's money available at this point to get that done this year, if it has to be budgeted for next year.
And Kent, would those systems allow us what Ilana was talking about, the possibility of posting community events and things like that with this kiosk? Is it strictly for directions and information, or do you have the ability to do other things, creative things with it?
We'll be able to add other things, job postings. We're going to put the ability to search through the job postings on there. We can add the events and other items, I believe.
Something FAQ-like might be helpful too, like where do I pay my taxes, and where do I get a birth certificate, where do I, check my property tax, all things like that, and then just have the department there, and then other parts of the kiosk could tell them where that department is located.
Microsoft Teams, next on the agenda. It's been pushed out. We've got people adopting it. We don't have training set up for it yet. Some people are finding it intuitive, others are killing it as soon as it pops up on their screen. Microsoft is still adding features to it because we're in the government cloud with that. There's a lot more security checks that have to be done. So we've had a few things show up and disappear because they were found to not be secure. But we're still in the process of rolling that out. And along those lines, I've had a few requests for other Office software training. And Max and Cindy are putting together some videos to handle that.
Questions? That is accessed like you access any other application in the Microsoft
Are we doing
Suite.
Microsoft Teams or are we doing the other thing?
I've got our office set up as a team, but I'm not sure anybody really knows how to use it yet, so I think these training videos will be really helpful. That way we can make appropriate use of it.
Okay, 2-year plan.
2-year plan, hardware-wise, we're rolling along. Dusty's getting the switches in. The host replacement will occur later this year. Storage is in. All of our backups have been migrated to the new storage at this point. Still replacing monitors, desktops, mobiles. Printers have been an issue. The Behemoth printer in the Commissioner's office, again, failed during tax season, printing of the tax bills. We had a Van Osdale rep here the week prior. He went through the machine thoroughly, replaced equipment in it, had it all prepped and ready, and it still went down. The following week, we had a meeting with Van Osdale and expressed our displeasure. They were supposed to be getting me numbers on replacement machines, smaller replacement machines. There's no need for a machine that size it's built to do 250,000 to 500,000 copies a week. And tax bills are about 250,000 sheets. It doesn't get used heavy enough to justify it. Van Osdale has yet to follow up on that. I'm not sure when the refresh is due. I'll have to look into that. The contract ends next year, so we'll be looking for a replacement there, I would assume.
I would suggest that on that, and I've been part of this discussion on an ongoing basis, we were probably overbought or we're oversold that unit. It is very complex to use, and it does a lot, and a lot of things that we don't necessarily need in government. It would probably be a good idea for us to, before we make a decision on what the next machine is going to be, actually reach out to the folks that are using it on a regular basis and see what they're trying to accomplish. If they're trying to do folded documents or stapled documents, those are some simple examples, but the thing is the size of a Volkswagen. It's very loud, and when one feature goes down, the whole thing comes to a grinding halt, and at a critical time like printing tax bills, that's a big deal. And quite frankly, on the user side, it is so far beyond in terms of the type of technology, beyond what most users have the capability of absorbing, that, again, I think we've got something that's very nice and does a lot of work. We're just not using it, nor do we apparently have a need to use it as it was designed, so let us know if you need some muscle with them, if they're not, it sounds like they're not being responsive, and I'm pretty sure there's a way to get out of that contract under those circumstances, but we just need to give some thought to what the next device or machine's gonna look like.
I like your idea of consulting with the people who use the machines. It's been one of my sort of gripes. They collect electronically the data about how that machine is used, which is great. So they sort of have a sense of how it's used, what's needed. But what that doesn't tell anybody is what we would like to be able to do or don't need to do necessarily on that machine. So the data they collect is only limited to the capability of that machine. It doesn't tell you what that or those departments actually need.
Yeah, and it'd probably be an opportunity for us to look at county duplicating, which has been an office for as long as I can remember. You know, when I was at the sheriff's office 20 years ago, if you needed something done, you sent it to the commissioner's office and they produced all of your little booklets and things like that. Probably need to look at the role of duplicating as a whole too, and see if that mode still fits, that model
Yeah,
still fits.
I think everybody does a lot less duplicating. You know, we don't print our big planning documents, except a handful these days, because they're all online. But if a citizen wants a copy, we'll definitely make a copy. So we do have that need still, just not at the production level that we used to need it.
And I think everybody in the room would agree that less printers is better operationally. I think the day of people having a printer at their desk for
Yeah,
convenience,
that's
those
crazy.
who really want to get away from that, from a power standpoint, from a material standpoint, from a maintenance standpoint, we could, if we could also figure out some ways to make people more mindful that it's more than just the tree that we're dealing with, so.
Besides, it's healthier to get your butt out of the chair periodically and walk to the printer.
We just hosted a wellness.
That's right.
Let's do this. Let's put a massive printer on the top floor of this building and disallow use of the elevator.
That's right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you for saying what I can't say. Okay, two-year plan to continue. Software, we've got some end-of-life operating systems and SQL databases that they're moving on. We should be off of those by the end of the year. Message switch at TCPS, we need to get back on that. I need to get someone looking at that. Video boards. Informacast for security, we had a test of that over at the courthouse last week. It was mostly successful. There were a few dead areas.
Yeah,
Those have been identified and updated.
yes.
Fairgrounds is continuing to move. Had a meeting yesterday discussing security and the video camera surveillance. YMCA, no movement there at this point. And no movement on Superior 7 or the Villa yet. And personnel, we've got about 10 to 15 days worth of training that we're starting to schedule for my staff. That's pretty much the two-year plan.
Ken, just, the budget for this, is this all coming out of your budget, or is it coming out of the capital budget, or how you,
Budget for which?
for the two-year plan, is it vary depending on what you're purchasing?
It's all over the place.
Okay.
And by all over the place, you're talking about EDIT, CUNCAP, or designated budget to do it.
Yes. And the projects at the bottom are, more like fairgrounds, that's its own little entity.
Because that's coming out of the fairgrounds pot money, right? That's coming out of the bond issuance?
That's my correct understanding.
Okay, that's what I would hope.
I haven't heard different yet, so. Okay, new business, carry home technical plan. Rebecca Humphrey stopped by last week. She has to submit a technical plan, and she wasn't sure she'd be able to show up today and explain what was involved, but obviously she didn't. It's fairly simple. The state just wants to know how she's storing, backing up, securing the records, digital access for all involved. I think it's due in a year and a half, so this will be a small ongoing project we'll touch on here and there.
This is something that the state's now requiring?
Yes.
For security and, or confidentiality, et
Yes.
cetera?
Yes. New positions. First and foremost, I want to get a help desk position. Social media director to handle our website and various other things. There's some flexibility there on whether that'll be mine or some other department at this point. And then, what nice to have, I'd like to have a project manager position. Somebody to actually run these projects and then help, sorry, brain fart. Somebody can handle these projects, scheduling the assets, staffing, and follow through with the vendors, do the pricing, comparisons.
So that's a project manager for hardware and software? Or is that using your hardware and software for a department's need? Or all of it?
That's, and other duties as assigned.
Another, yes, okay, got it.
So be it a department says, hey, we'd like to do this, they can take over that
Right.
project, run it. Or be it, we need new hardware here for some purpose. And then, next up, GIS planning. Eric had talked to Tracy about the future of GIS and what it means to the assessors department, and that had spun off a couple of meetings about GIS and its role in the county government. So I've got this line in the agenda because the question arose, should it be this board that's handling this, or should we keep it a smaller group to get some direction and then come back with recommendations to this board? Or should we empower a smaller group to just lay out the entire scope?
I'm going to jump in real quick. There have been a couple of meetings, and I met with the group the first meeting after talking to Eric. It's very clear that there are multiple offices in county government that rely on different facets of GIS or GIS-related products. And I thought it'd just be a good time to sit down and learn more about the function of GIS in county government and see if there are any potential efficiencies that we could drive into the process, and just be sure that we are absolutely providing updated information and updated, reliable information efficiently to the public, or as efficiently as possible. And it was a good meeting. Been a robust discussion since then about how we how we move projects along faster and ultimately give, again, the people that are the users, because there are many. I look at, for example, either GIS or the Beacon portal almost on a daily basis in my job, and I know that virtually every elected official or department head at the table right now has a great deal of interaction. So it's a big part of what we do, and we want it to be a well-oiled machine. And it seems to reason that if we've got a bunch of people involved in it right now, we could have some crossover. Some of that crossover is probably necessary, but we should be looking for ways, if we've got crossover or inefficiencies in the process, we ought to be just burning up the carpet to fix that. So.
Yeah, and to kind of add a little bit to that, a lot of people, especially the council people here who might not be familiar with this situation, it's a very important monetary situation. It's not just providing information, it's being responsible with our funds, which is, I think if we're going to be responsible in the future, we have to look at how irresponsible we've been in the past. We have a large seven-figure number in a decade of development for a product that, per all of this information, we have no goals whatsoever for. And we're going to continue spending money to develop a product that we have no goals for. That 5 years ago, we've entered into a contract with Beacon that facilitates about 2.4 million inquiries a year for 400,000 people at the cost of around $20,000 a year. At the same time, like I said, we have a seven-figure cost associated with a product that we're continuing to dump money into that I don't think, without any sort of goals, is really ridiculous. And then, so a lot of what our meetings are, what do people use this stuff for? And I think I kind of got two things conflated that I regret, is that, all these departments with Esri licenses are using ArcMap and ArcReader to facilitate their day-to-day workflow, and this has never been what this meeting is about. All those officers are going to continue to use whatever tools that their department's own Esri products to continue to facilitate their workflow as we do. This is really about the money that's invested in the public-facing GIS, like what is there for the public. And although we use it to perform some of our duties as well, I just feel like having two competing systems is an epic waste of money. Competing with ourselves doesn't do a whole lot for the information we're trying to convey to the public. And so, there's definitely, I think, some efficiencies that can be for us focusing on one path. And I think that starts with, like, what do we need it to do? What are all the things we need it to do? And then what's the one system that's going to do that stuff?
So what are the two systems that you're talking about?
We contract with a company called Beacon to provide GIS through their public portal, and then this is the other one, the one we maintain full-time staff to update internally.
It's the one all the departments use all the time.
What's this one called?
County GIS.
County GIS.
I didn't realize they're two different, so they're not the same. So when I go out there and I'm looking stuff up, I'm not looking, it's a different system than we use, is what you're telling me.
Depends on which one you click on.
Okay.
And the data hasn't been the same. So one thing with the
It's
county
confusing
GIS
when I'm
is
there.
the one that's public-facing now, and they're working on one that's...
Which this is the new server with live link to SQL. Part of it was moving things to SQL 2016. And then also this is HTTPS secure, which we're trying to move everything to. The older one was not.
So the new one is actually up there now?
Yeah.
So the new one
for the public yet, but
So the one that the public can use right now and has been able to use for a decade has not changed in that decade.
Well, yeah, it has.
Well, as far as the information, the parcel lines have moved, but as far as the...
No, all kinds of information has been added to it.
Yeah, we're constantly updating the GIS file.
Yeah.
You're just talking about the information from your office that hadn't been updated since 2014.
And the map, right. For as far as the public is concerned, with the information the public consumes, like I said, 2.4 million inquiries about tax and assessment data, and the aerial photographs that relate to that tax data, like you could look up, like that hotel, right? Like the New Hampton, right? You can look it up, it'll say it's owned by Hampton, but it's just a vacant piece of ground on the aerial. And the information's totally antiquated, and it has been, and literally that part of it, that aspect of it has not changed in over a decade.
We're talking about county GIS right now?
County GIS, right?
Well, I I'd like to start by giving a little bit of a history lesson. The county started in on GIS because I would say we were a little late to the table, maybe in GIS in our county. Other counties were doing a lot of GIS prior to us, I mean in the country, not necessarily in the state. And as the county GIS developed and we started adding content and various departments were sort of assigned to be the owner of a particular GIS layer, those things were added. And then there were a group of realtors and maybe bankers who sort of bitched and moaned that it was beyond they didn't want to have to learn another system, and counties that didn't have GIS had defaulted to Beacon because they didn't have to do it themselves. And so we sort of said, well, okay, we'll go ahead and do Beacon for all these people who didn't want to have to learn a different system. But it was never, it was intended to be sort of the less robust stepchild for ease of GIS. There was never any intent that Beacon be the primary public-facing platform, because it's, quite frankly, it's not as robust. I walk citizens all the time over the phone to how to use the county GIS. I never show anybody how to use Beacon because I don't think it's worthwhile, except if you know the owner of a property, but you don't know where the property is, then you can search more easily by name on Beacon. But that's the only benefit, in my mind, other than the assessor's information. But the assessor's information could just as easily be part of a parcel, the parcel identification in GIS. My opinion is that we shouldn't be spending money on Beacon. We should be spending our resources to make our GIS system more robust for the public. And on sort of a personal department level, when Eric asked me for access to the zoning maps, which are on GIS, I reluctantly agreed because I don't want, by statute, I'm required to keep the zoning maps, and I don't want another company being able potentially to monkey with that. Now, how serious that potential is, I don't know, because I'm not a mechanic.
If they wanted to change a zone, all they'd have to do is change a single field in basically an spreadsheet.
Right. So if the point of getting the zoning maps also on Beacon was to denigrate GIS, then I never would have done that, because they need to be on GIS where we really can make sure that they are accurate and not easily manipulated. So my opinion is that our resources need to be spent on GIS. And part of the reason, as I understand it, that the more up-to-date aerial photos aren't backing up our public GIS is that there wasn't enough server space.
Yeah, I can add in a little bit. A lot of the inability to do new things on the current public site is that server's 10 years old now, can't be updated, can't have more drive space added. It's down to its last operating system drive. The backup drive failed, so once the operating system drive fails in it, that server's dead. And it didn't make sense to put more resources into a 10-year-old server. So what I've been working on is porting everything over to a new server,
that we paid for with GIS sales money. This will allow us to do a lot more than we've been able to do in the past. It will open up the ability for departments to build their own maps to put out to the public, not just have the one interface. And I think it'll really improve what we get out of the money we put into GIS once this is out there fully. I don't know if anybody had tried the link we sent out. Did anybody on the group try that link?
Not yet.
Okay, so we had some security certificates to straighten out. It is working without a security exception in Firefox. It's still giving an error in Chrome. We're working on that, though. So if you want to look at that link again, you can look at it. This one now is showing current assessment information from a SQL Server 2016. We've migrated off the old SQL Server that's going away. Has the 2016 arrows on it. The 2018s we just received about 2 weeks ago, so I'll load those on before it goes public. This will have the ability to display a lot more things than we've been able to, and has a lot more space, and has the ability to offload data onto other servers, which the older version of the software did not allow. So I think we'll get a lot more utility out of this once it's fully up and configured. So, which will probably roll over to the public, I'd say, at least limited within the next 2 weeks. We would need to do some testing, push it out to a group to test before it's out and replaces the main public site.
You know, I know the passions on this run very, very high, and I feel that, and I can appreciate that. This discussion should be driven by cost, efficiency, and ease of use. I'm not married to Beacon. I'm not married to County GIS. We ought to be providing the best service that we can to the users, both internal and external, without a doubt. And again, if we're not doing that now, and we genuinely are spending a lot more than we have to, we should be open to walking together into a process that does something that meets everybody's needs. And I'm not saying we turn one off, turn the other, or beef the other one up. I'm just saying it's fair time for us to have that discussion as we move forward. Under no circumstances should a citizen look at a county product and have a delay in information or have the wrong information. That starts a cascade of problems that really we have to hold ourselves accountable to a standard that's better than that. And if it's equipment driven, then doggone it, we need to replace the equipment, and we need to get off our tails and do it expeditiously to be sure, again, that we're not putting information out. The folks who use these services count on it in so many ways. And again, just in the commissioner's office, somebody in our office touches both of these systems on a daily basis. And if you're not in a situation where you've had to use it, get in there and plunk around into both systems and let us know what you think. I want this discussion to continue with a direction, hopefully, that at least better outlines our use and where our deficiencies are.
I want to respond to some of that stuff, and basically I agree with Sally that Beacon, I'm not married to Beacon. I hated Beacon when I first saw their presentation. I continue to dislike working with Beacon. They're not really the greatest company, but that is better than an unmitigated disaster. And what the reason Beacon was brought on was strictly political and technical. It had nothing to do with realtors, and I don't buy that for a minute, because I was invested a lot in the office with talks originally about Beacon, why we didn't go to it, and then as a candidate, I was getting a lot of calls from the press where they misunderstood a technical issue. A lot of people in, like I said, 2.4 million queries a year. The real estate's huge here. The real estate community is not something to be poo-pooed. They need access to data. It's a huge economy. It drives our economy, and so when we had our own Camas system that we built, we had a very functional GIS system that had that information and a data search engine where you could search. We had an awesome GIS system that we built ourselves, and it was pretty awesome. We had the database that supported it was awesome. When we had to change due to 50 IAC to a Windows-based Camas system, that data portal disappeared because the system that drove it disappeared. And there was never any technical push to reinvent it from the SQL tables of our new Camas system to produce a county public interface portal. And I understood all the nuanced technical issues of why that happened, but if you're just a realtor out there on the street and you see administrations change over and an office go completely dark where there used to be tons of access to stuff online and then it was all gone, it looked like Iron Curtain. People were like, this is nefarious, this is Iron Curtain. I knew it wasn't. Linda didn't do it to withhold information or hurt the public in any way. It was a misunderstood technical issue, but this whole Beacon thing was, when my campaign made an issue of transparency and not having this stuff online, it had been 4 years since it was taken down. The office had been dark for almost 4 years. That was really the only reason I was convinced to run, is like people being like, we need the data essential to perform our jobs to where we don't have to call this office repeatedly over and over and deal with different, it just needs to be out there again. And given, the county's inability to reproduce what was lost in 4 years, Linda was smart enough to realize there was no amount of howling MITs that was going to get a programming effort that substantial to be done in a matter of months so she can say, to my campaign, moot point, and that's what was done with Beacon is, hey, look, it's all up there. It's all up there. It's done, because these systems don't take long to launch. When we sat through a GIS presentation with Esri, this is an out-of-the-box Esri product. I don't know how long ago we bought that server, but they said this takes about a week to set up.
No, this is a GeoCortex Essentials. It's not an Esri product. It's running on RTS server.
Okay, so I feel like maybe to prevent some of these miscommunications where they present a product that looks and feels just like this and tell us this is a weak product, we need written goals. Because I agree with Sally. Ideally, we have a system we build ourselves that do the things we need to do that's maintained by our people. That is the ideal situation, is tell Beacon to go get lost. But the fact is, if you compare side by side, and I encourage you all to do this, the two products, Beacon is very functional, despite how little I like working with them and how they're selling our own data back to us. What they produce is a very functional product for $20,000 when what we have failed to do in a decade for over $1 million. And as much as I don't like Beacon, it's really hard to just ignore that, and it's really hard to keep dumping more money in this $1 million pile without any written expectation of what will be returned at any date. If this was something that was like, on this date, this system will perform these things, let's start phasing people off Beacon, because the real estate community, they'll use any functional system. They never came, we don't want to learn anything. Actually, I do presentations with Beacon a lot, and a lot of them have questions about other systems that other people use and functionality they'd like to see added. And a lot of, it's a fluid conversation. There might be like a transitional period, but they will absolutely use whatever system is functional and gives them up-to-date information. It had nothing to do with like being bullied by realtors and people who are just lazy in the community. That was really an excuse that I wish wasn't. And I don't expect Linda to necessarily have my perspective on it, but I've never talked to a realtor who was like adamant, that had to have that particular system. Most of these people used to use our system and loved it and had no problem with it because it was functional. That system was very functional. It was quick, down and dirty, easy, simple to use. It'd be great to be there, but we're not going to get there by just dumping money at it and having no goals. And that's something Tracy said, all of us write down what you need it to do so we can figure this out. And to my knowledge, I'm the only one who has returned an actual written account of like what our office needs it to do for us and the public. So until you guys actually write down what you guys need it to do, the verbal, things you say you don't like about Beacon, when I went to Beacon, I provided in writing their response to all that, and it seemed to satisfy it. So until someone says, a lot of what I hear about Beacon is it's not robust, it's antiquated, it's old. Like these words don't define the deficiencies to me in a way where at least I can understand where everyone's coming from. When I talk to them about like the deficiencies of the image quality being poor, you have to admit, if you look at those side by side and scroll and let it refresh, Beacon refreshes so much faster because it's meant to facilitate those 2.4 million queries. If you're using it as an internal tool instead of ArcReader, which uses like really similar maps, right?
Well, ArcRinger is the slowest way you could do it. It's a free product from Esri. It's almost intentionally limited in its capabilities because they want you to buy.
ArcMap. I mean, we do have, and a lot of people do have ArcMap licenses,
But,
right?
you know, we don't have enough licenses for all the people that need access.
What Beacon told us, and I don't know, I think we should probably fully read and understand the Beacon contract. As much as we hate them, you know your enemy, if nothing else, know what we're paying for. I mean, Beacon can use, one thing I learned in that Esri meeting is that that's a confused company. Those are people selling software to all their competitors and competing with them and not wanting to trash their competitors, but still wanting to sell us software. And so I was pretty confused, but one thing we got out of that is you can use whatever Esri browser you want in Beacon. When Sally loads her Beacon and logs in as Sally, it will load whatever Esri browser she wants to, whatever one she wants. Viewer. I use browser and viewer inappropriately all the time.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry. My terminology is not good on this, but I mean, my understanding is like, if there's in writing, this is what we need it to do, I think that's how this starts, is like, cool, here's all the things we need Beacon to do that it's not doing, but right now, I don't even have a single thing besides like, it's not robust, it's old, it's bad, but it's like specifically what is wrong with this system that they haven't already responded to. And then once we know where Beacon's deficient and where the county system's deficient, I think we can work towards a county system and a deadline that we're all cool with and kick out all the contractors. But I mean, at the end of the day is, if the contractors are going to provide a slightly substandard product for 20G a year, we have to look at how much more we're getting for whatever our budget is. And that's my stance on it, but I just feel like this is, like I said, I mean, from a user's perspective, I get that the parcel lines are updating. Little has changed about this map from a functional sense in a very long time. And I understand this one, the one that I'm playing with, is a work in progress. I don't know what your timetable is, but, and I do appreciate the new maps up there. It'd be awesome to get some new, like, tax and assessment data.
Yeah, which, like I said, this is connected to your current data. So it should, anything you look at on here will be the same as what you'll see on Beacon.
Yeah, continue to play with it. But I think we should be very hesitant of pumping an unlimited amount of resources into this without any sort of written expectations and timetables. And I think that's so important.
I agree with that. I do think we need to know what is it that departments needed to do, and what is it that we want the public to have, to easily obtain, what information do we want the public to easily obtain? Now, for my office, I've had a vision for what GIS could do for a long time. You know, to me, I think you ought to be able to click on a piece of property. You ought to be able to see every building permit that was ever issued for that property. You ought to be able to see every rezone that occurred on that property. You ought to be able to see any variance that was applied for and approved or denied. All that data, I mean, that's what GIS, it's data sets. So, you know, to me, that's my vision for how GIS ought to work.
Mine too, and actually, when I talk to people in your office, like Larry Ockerman and John Bernstein, wow. We actually, I don't know,
He wishes he were Larry Bird.
but I don't know if you've seen, doesn't sound like you use Beacon much or log in, but the permits you maintain for like Battleground, they gave us access to that. We post them on Beacon. You can look at a map. I can outlay every permit that APC has maintained. If I see electrical $10,000, I can click on that and go get information on it. And that's only with your office. I can't get the building commissioner. I can't get the city engineering department. I can't get Union Township to talk to me. But like, I appreciate that, like, whenever there's a permit that passes through your office, it is out there for people to use and see, and it's transparent. And yeah, if we get everyone on board with that, that's awesome. And that's the kind of thing that it took us about, half an hour to facilitate on Beacon. And as much as I don't like it, I mean, we have to look at the functionality that a lot of what you just envisioned is actually happening with our offices on Beacon right now, and we could facilitate a lot more.
Except it's happening without my authority. That's what I dislike. I dislike one department sort of usurping another department's data, which is how I sort of feel this has been moving along.
And I apologize. If there's anything that I'm transmitting of yours that you're not comfortable with, by all means, let me know when it comes off. But I'm not trying to use, my goal, as far as any public, I am constantly trolling for public info, any thing from Indiana Maps that we put out there, from your office. I just feel like before we really knew it was out there, my office spent tons of money duplicating, literally calling the same people and doing the same research as your vacancy study was doing better. And we found out that hey, look, Sally has all this stuff out there. We're
It's
literally
on our
doing the same.
website. How easy is it to get to? I mean, I don't understand why it needs to be on a different platform.
Well, we clearly won't,
We won't, yeah.
settle the debate today, but I would suggest again that with the group that met before, we should probably schedule another meeting. We should circle back around about what the various uses are per department or agency and sort of a wish list of what we would hope to accomplish. What we have to do is collectively, we have to come up with a roadmap for where we want to be. The piece, what I'm hearing is that, I'm hearing Eric say that he's not necessarily married to Beacon. He just wants a product that is user-friendly for the folks that use the services of his office. And I'm convinced that we can get there as long as we don't build walls or silos, if you will, and we realize that we all want the same thing, and that's a product that can be used by everyone and that moves us in a forward direction, and that hasn't always been the case. And we are investing, over the last decade, we have invested a substantial amount of money, and we've got to do a better job and turn around and being sure that we've got the stuff that the public sees again is accurate. So I'd love to be able to debate this for the rest of the morning, but we do have other agenda items, and I would just encourage, if there's anyone here who has not been plugged into the process as we've met, we started with a small group. We obviously don't want the group to grow to 50 people where it's unmanageable, but again, it does, especially for our council members who have control of our purse strings, it does impact decision-making at budget time and throughout the year, so I would certainly welcome input and involvement from you folks as well. The next time we get a meeting scheduled, we'll get an invite.
Great.
out. So,
Tracy, just one thing I'd like to add to your goal about efficiency and accuracy. I would like to add security to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
May I add one short thing from what we discussed in those meetings? So a lot of the investment in GIS over the last decade was in maintaining and creating all the layers. The parcels, the roads, address points, zoning, all that then is on Beacon. So a lot of the things that are on Beacon are based on that investment over those years of creating and maintaining all those. So it's hard to say, oh, you spent this much on your internal one and this little on Beacon. Well, that's because a lot of things that are on Beacon are things we spent money on internally to create and maintain. One other thing is our internal site is a map-centric site. Beacon is a data attribute-centric, ownership, value, assessed value, all that. Those are the two different groups that they're each designed to benefit and be used by. So a lot of people who use the internal one are ones that are looking for a map, looking for being able to have a custom layout of a map, turn on and off the layers they want. We have layers on there that aren't on Beacon, and vice versa. Beacon has things we don't have, but a lot of them are based on attributes from our databases that are applied to GIS files we maintain. So it's the interplay between the two is more complex than it appears when you're just looking at it as, oh, this is a website and this is a website. The data within them is intertwined a lot, and we spend a lot of money maintaining that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, final agenda item, or new business agenda item, GIS fees. During our meetings, there was some question about whether these fees are still relevant. I don't know the county process for addressing ordinances or making recommendations on ordinances. We send that to a committee.
So it would, if you have recommended changes to the fee structure, simply come up with a justification. I would suggest having it approved by this board then, and then what we normally like to encourage agencies, elected officials, and department heads to do is we'd like to catch as many of these as we can in one process, so that we're not touching fees 12 times a year. I think we just adjusted health department fees 2 meetings ago, And certainly, we're open to adjusting. Again, just be prepared to put together a justification for why they need to be changed. I do think that there's also, Zach or Bob, does that go to the Revenue Committee too? Do they share anything in that?
Revenue Committee is kind of, hasn't met for a little while, because we had our little budget committee that's kind of taken the place of that, but
So
I
it's
don't think they've ever made a recommendation on the Revenue Committee on that either, so.
So
We can take it, I mean, that is fine, because we've got council reps and commissioner in there. We can certainly handle it at our budget buddies group, but,
So the advisory board certainly would want to get a nod from the advisory board, and then it's just
I
a
would think
matter
normally
of...
we just come here and then just go on to the commissioners or council, or whoever it might be, and Doug, of course, has to rewrite.
And is there anything in, specifically, what are you looking at, Kim?
You want me to say what they are?
Go ahead.
Well, so most of the money in GIS sales is either for data sales, large data sales. We don't do that many of those anymore because a lot of the data we used to sell, that they can get to from the state for free now, like parcels, roads, address points. And then the other part of that is small data sales, where we have a consultant say, oh, I just need parcels over this 1 square mile, and we just charge for the time to pull out the data they want and send it to them. And then the smallest part is just map prints, the cost of printing and the cost of the time to lay out a custom map. So we need to say, do we want to be in this business? It used to be well over $10,000 a year between those three. Now it's more like $2,000 to $3,000 a year. So it's almost to the point where selling those large data sales aren't maybe worth the time, and there's a lot of companies that get use out of that data that actually may help improve development. That's what I've heard. The counties that give out their data tend to improve economic development, because then you've got people that don't have to make a call. They can just go to your website, download the data they need, and figure out if they want to put a location in your county. So it's a lot easier for those type of people to do that. So we just need to look at the three streams of revenue and see, okay, is it worth, do we need to still charge for this? Now, I'd say the map sales, unless you want to just put it out there where you can do it from the web, we're not going to make custom maps anymore. We probably need to keep that charge, because otherwise we'll be inundated. We already are sometimes, with people saying, oh, I want this and this and this on a custom map, and we tell them, oh, that's going to be $60, because it's going to take several hours to do it.
And all of a sudden, they don't need it anymore?
Yeah, but we have to fight against that all the time, because, there are people that would like us to be a consulting firm for them for free.
I don't like fees that cost more to collect
Yeah.
than they benefit. We used at the sheriff's office, we did away with some of those. We have to be careful, be sure that it's not, that a fee is not a statutorily required fee, because I believe there's still a little known law in the books about it being illegal not to collect a fee, no matter how small it is. But certainly, we can look at that if you want. Are you proposing specific changes today, or just a discussion, and going to bring something back to the board or distribute something at some point?
Just a discussion today.
Okay.
I think we need to determine the direction of GIS and see how that plays into the fee structure. But I wanted the heads up on this, so the board be aware we're looking at it.
Yeah. So it sounds like what Bob is saying is board, commissioners, and an ordinance. And typically, I think if you're raising money, we typically like to have 2 readings of the ordinance, so we get public
Yes, and
comment.
we would want to.
What's the annual revenue about?
As far as data sales, it used to be around 10,000. Now, in recent years, it's more like 3,000, I think, maybe even 2,000. Because we're not doing the big data sales, we're not selling parcels for $1,000 for the whole county very much anymore, because they can go to the state and get them for free, because the state gets them from us at least twice a year. So if they're willing to go with a little bit older data, they get it for free. So most users are just like, they can get the free data, compare it to our website, and say, oh, well, these are the same, I'm not going to pay for.
Is this any data that we have on GIS?
No, this is parcels, roads, address points, and just a few other layers. Some of it's free. If it's not listed on the ordinance, then it's free. If it's listed on the ordinance, then it's what?
You still
The
sell
ordinance
the
charge.
aerials?
Yeah, but it's like $1 per tile.
Can you send us, or
Yeah, we
just
can.
where to get the ordinance and all the stuff that we,
Yeah.
so I think I may have objected to it based on the impression that there was stuff that we couldn't give freely to people that we may be able to, if it's not on the ordinance.
Yeah.
The other thing it might be worth going through as part of some other discussion, but not fees, but is back to the ownership, back to the idea of who owns which layers. And I know that we went through, you and our staff went through.
Who maintains?
Yes, who maintains it and who sort of has authority over its dissemination.
Yeah.
So it might be worth looking at that again as part of one of these processes,
Okay.
or a deeper discussion.
Or maybe even part of that new project manager kind of role.
Yeah.
Where they kind of just lord over these layers and make sure that the parties responsible are constantly updating them at their regular intervals so they don't fall behind. And then there's an accountable person. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
why does this look like it did 10 years ago? You know,
Which, some, like soils, that doesn't change because it's from USGS.
static layers, yeah.
Whereas parcels are changing, roads are changing, address points are changing, zoning's changing.
I think your dream product is a great idea, and coming up with a list of those, it makes perfectly good sense to be able to go to one source and get updates to stuff from the building commission or health department.
And some of that we could do now that you've mentioned that. Like, for a while, we were putting recorded document numbers on subdivisions so that you could click on the subdivision and see, easements document, the original plat, all those kind of things, but nobody gave me feedback they were using it. So it was like, why continue to fill those out?
And was that internal or public?
It's internal, but I have it on, it's on the website as well. If you click through the subdivisions there, some of them have document numbers on them.
Okay.
Or like the building permits, RA puts those when new addresses are assigned, the permit is on there.
Right.
So that'd be very easy to put that, link that to the parcel that the address is in, and have a place where they can see it.
Right.
So there's a lot of those things, you just gotta say, hey, we want to have access to this. Other things, we'd probably need a new database set up to store. If we wanted to go full-blown every single record related to a property, that'd be a little more complex, obviously, but.
Because we've been working on creating databases for probably over 20 years.
Yeah.
So, there's a subdivision database, there's a zoning database, there's a Board of Zoning Appeals case database. And in those databases, Don's been scanning plats and things and approval letters and all that kind of stuff. So all that paper documentation is attached to that particular file in the database.
Yeah, so we can look at linking that.
Yes.
We've linked things in the past.
Okay.
We've been doing the same pretty much too,
Yeah.
as far as, we've got all of the driveway permits, and the driveway
Right.
permits are associated with the location, and then you click on that location,
Right.
and you're able to pull up that original driveway permit to be able to view it. So that would be nice to be able to tie that into.
It'd be interesting to see what all of our projects are. And one thing in this research that I learned is that, when you think about searching on a GIS system, like you're searching for parcel information, but like, I guess that's not true. It doesn't have to be true, at least for a lot of the vendors. I'm sure with this system as well, we could figure it out. But like a lot of the projects I saw was like the Boy Scouts took a picture of and typed in the data for every gravestone in their county. And you type in, William, Harrison, whatever, it'll bring up all the people who are buried in the county, name that, picture their gravestone, and like, you can like literally search for anything. We put all of our personal property on Beacon, so even though there's no real estate parcel, you can search for anyone's personal property account. You can search for a permit, but even though it's not tied to, it could be tied to a group of parcels or something, but it can literally just search for any database, whether it's on the map or not, or loosely tied to a map, like a gravestone or something. But there's a lot of cool like GIS projects that aren't necessarily even tied to a parcel layer, just using it as a way to compile public projects and cool stuff on there. That's one of the reasons I wanted M-Drive access, just see what else was on there, just to like, hey, maybe the public will think this is really cool. Let's throw it on there. But yeah, I think it'd be cool to have a list of projects. Like, those are all things that would be cool if we could incorporate in some way.
What about judgments and liens?
Put them on there.
Those two.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everything.
Yeah, the one thing I like about Beacon too is, and I think that any system we use is like, it has permissions. like, I can log in as myself or the public. When I'm logged in as the public, I have access to a lot of sales disclosures, maybe liens, anything that's public. But then if I log in as myself, we put a bunch of internal documents that, maybe there's confidential information, maybe it's something someone submitted in an appeal. We just use it as a file cabinet. We actually got rid of DocuWare and just used Beacon because it's a digital file cabinet that you could literally store any document or anything tied to a parcel or not, tied to a person. And I'm saying this is probably not Beacon-centric, this is probably any Beacon or major competitor over our system, but people just think of it as like a thing information tied to a parcel, and it's really just like, could be a general file cabinet for so many things.
Is there anyone in the county that does usability testing currently?
No, I can say this site meets Web Accessibility Content Guideline 2.0.
So that might be some good data to also gather there's the industrial engineering program at Purdue. Lots of students do usability testing for various different groups. Perhaps we should hire a student group or something to conduct usability tests with potential people like realtors and how they use our spaces. Because I hear a lot of expert uses of the space of it, and an expert can always make a system do what they want. But I think if we have some additional information about how a typical user uses it, I think that would be helpful for prioritizing product specifications and needs.
We're getting the use stats on it. That's something that frustrated me is, I can tell you how many hundreds of thousands of users use Beacon, how many millions of inquiries they do in any time period, what their email addresses are, who is public, who's signed up. They have great accountability for who's using it. And it'd be nice to know, maybe 10 million people are using this, and we really need to just get rid of Beacon like tomorrow because it's so insignificant and focus on this, but that'd be good too as far as those usability
We haven't spent
stuff.
the extra money on the tools to track usage here, and we don't require any sign up here, so we'd have to add something.
I know it was an extra cost.
It'd either just be software to track usage numbers, that's not that much. But if we wanted to do that and know who they were, then we'd have to have some kind of sign up.
It'd be interesting to know what it would cost to have similar side-by-side usage numbers and then.
Well, yeah,
The GIS system is terrible from a user.
it's just,
As someone who doesn't use it every day.
I've tried to use Beacon, and it's been.
So I don't know that you need to study, maybe you need to figure out what to make it better, but from a layman's.
You're saying which one? You're saying GIS or Beacon? Or
No, GIS. I've used Beacon. I find that easier, but there's a lot less information on it, right? I think, I don't know.
This is why we need data. It's not like our feelings about.
You guys should write down some queries, like, who owns this? What's this worth? What's the zoning, whatever it is, and then just go use both systems and see if you can.
Because when you go into the GIS, I think you end up, for some stuff, like taxes, you
It
get
links you right to Beacon, right?
Yeah, and that was a decision made when the old system went down. When this was first set up 10 years ago, it linked to our own inbuilt system, our own inbuilt webpage. And then when the changeover to Beacon happened, Dave was like, we're not going to spend any time building anything internal, just link it to Beacon.
That is the narrative that I remember, not the whole, like, realtors won't listen to us, and it was, we didn't want to spend the money to rebuild.
I think that
this
came
thing.
from, I had people who call me and say, I don't know how to do this, and I was like, well, there's instructions there, I can walk you through it, and I actually had one realtor say to me, I don't read. I don't want to read something.
That was a discussion here at the committee.
That person just
that all
probably
came
got
from
other
here.
problems.
Class, I would charge them for it.
We give them for free.
We did free classes for this as well when it first went out.
We gotta do free classes when you launch it.
On the ordinance, if we could see some data, on how it's gone down over time, I think it's a commissioner problem, not problem, but opportunity. To have that as well would, because I don't have the exact specifications of the ordinance we need to fix, and then numbers on how it's gone down over time, and why we think we're not going to anticipate some sort of gold rush on this later, so.
Okay, other business?
I have one thing, and this has to do with introducing outside flash drives for public meetings when citizens want to make presentations. We have internally sort of set a deadline for citizens to bring us a flash drive if they want it displayed as part of their presentation, and then we bring it up to you guys to have it checked for security purposes, so we don't have one infecting the system. But once that's done, I'd like to have a protocol. Does that flash drive come back down to us for our safekeeping until the meeting, and we install it? Do we give it back to I wouldn't think we'd want to give it back to the person who gave it to us, or do you hang on to it till the day of the meeting? We just are sort of at a loss as to procedurally what to do.
Does this system is connected to the network, right?
Yes.
Doesn't have to be.
Oh, the one I'm playing this on right now, or?
Yeah.
Well, the one in the room is connected to the
whole network?
Yes.
Doesn't have to be.
So, yeah, this computer here is on the network. They want to connect into this, that's when we do the scan. If they bring their own laptop or something like that and they just connect to the screens, then it doesn't.
And that causes some problems too, because they have a hard time getting their laptop to.
Yeah, we don't encourage people to do that.
Is there anything that we can do there's a lot of steps to that. Is there anything that we can do in this room that provides,
Put a second machine down there.
That's just off the network.
Yeah. Drop a laptop in and let them use the laptop.
And then do we have to,
They'd have
for
to connect
purposes
to,
of the screen, do we have to sort of log out of the room computer and let them log in?
might just be.
I mean, we can't take a lot of time in the middle of a meeting just for a citizen to bring their stuff up.
Well, could you put a switch in and have two cables on off of this?
If I may real quick, we ran the same issue with the Drainage Board consultants with residential, commercial, industrial developments wanting to have their own files and bring in thumb drives, et cetera. I'm pretty sure we set something up with the IT department where the consultants could just download it from their office. They could log in, download it into our system, and then we could just pull it up, the digital file up here. That way you didn't have to mess with laptops and all that stuff. We've been doing it for 3 or 4 months now, about all this year, calendar year. I think it was OneDrive, actually, yeah. Brenda's been managing that for me, so I don't remember all the details, but I know we set it up because I said the same thing. This is inefficient, we got to streamline this. This is taking too much time, too many steps, too many things to go wrong. They just need to be able to download it straight from their desk to our system. We come in here and pull it right up, and bingo, there it is on the screen. It takes 5 seconds. So
SharePoint for that?
it may be, I don't remember the software, so I don't know if SharePoint, OneDrive, one of the two. Yeah, I think it was, actually. That does sound right, yeah. Anyway, I'm just sharing with you, that's what we did, and it's been working very well, so.
We need to expand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we have a efficient system that keeps the county's system secure.
Okay. There's one other thing. Last time, our fiber connections throughout the county, there's some questions on that. And there was requests for maps. And some of that data I don't want to give out in public meeting, but Dusty does have a general map that.
Yeah, we've got the fiber network on GIS, so we can produce custom maps if we need to.
But not the public site.
Right, it's never been on the.
So if anyone would like to ask questions related to that, we can do it here, or you can talk with Dusty afterward. But anything that's done in this meeting, I'd like to keep very general. Good? Mr. Brown?
Yep.
I did have a couple, I had a couple questions. On the hiring that you're doing, the new positions, do you have a timeline for those? The help desk, social media, and project manager?
May 1st, I have to have my job.
May 1st is when you're supposed to put the request into the commissioners. And
Okay.
were these going to be like EDIT positions or general fund? General fund's going to be really difficult this year. From the commissioner's recommendation on pay raises, it's going to be really difficult.
I have suggested to Kent that he prioritize those requests and give us, obviously it has to go, since they're new positions, new job descriptions, of the process, it has to go through. But I suggested that he also not only be very still just giving, job descriptions and things like that, but prioritize them. 'Cause
Yeah,
I just,
yeah.
my sense is,
It'll be tough.
I know what the sheriff's needs are, and public safety is critical, and I think council's likely to have some pretty tough decisions coming August, September.
And then were we going to add another member to this group? To that we talked about last time?
Yeah, an outside
Like a
accounting person?
citizen member, right?
Yeah.
We need a citizen member.
Yeah.
And I think that it might require a change in the, we're established by ordinance, right?
I thought someone had stepped down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was somebody from,
Do we have somebody who's got this?
We had someone on here previously.
The two members who are non-elected officials nor required to be employees by Tippecanoe County, and I think that.
We talking about Brad Alexander?
Brad, one of those.
Brad's one of them.
Who is the other? We have another.
well, was, the guy who owned the big, local
Wintech?
Wintech.
Steve, yeah.
Yes.
He
right.
was for a while.
Steve Belter was on for some time. I think even after he sold Wintech, wasn't
Yeah, he was.
You try to verify that's who it was, and then, we wanted to fill that, that's already part of the ordinance, and then fill that.
I'm certain it was him. I remember working with him.
He was on here.
Yeah.
I thought he stepped off a couple of years ago, but I can't.
Sounds like
I
we need a
don't
roster.
think he's been on there in the last 4 years, since I've been back on this.
I've never seen them in meetings, and I've been
he? Yeah, I went back through minutes and saw him for a while, and then I don't remember what year, and then all of a sudden he wasn't listed in the minutes anymore as being present or being
Yeah, we had
a
a big,
member but absent.
we had a big discussion about it.
Yeah. Could check the website, maybe.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Brad is on here. Steve is not.
Yeah, I think it's probably been several years. Like, several, probably end up being 4 or 5, not just 3.
Two non-elected officials. And he was.
Working the city government.
Don't worry about it.
And I think someone in.
I just had the files saved on the G drive in case if they wanted it to hold up.
You should have told me.
I did make a recommendation.
They're not doing it.
We're done now.
Yeah, I know.
Julie Snow?
Looks like it's
A lot of hurdles I gotta come over. Finance, I know.